She began to understand quite clearly that truth cannot be understood from books alone or by any written words, but only by personal growth and development in understanding, and that things written even in the book of books can be astonishingly misunderstood, while one still lives on the low levels of spiritual experience and on the wrong side of the grave of the mountain. This quote is from Hannah Hurnard's novel, Hind's Feet on High Places. In this quote, she describes how knowledge itself is not enough to understand truth, that one must die to themselves and live a sanctified life in order to truly understand truth. So knowledge is not enough. She describes this in the very beginning of the quote as she talks about how books and words themselves are just not sufficient to understand truth. They supply knowledge and reasoning, but they don't help you understand it, because knowledge and understanding are two different things. This is like saying you grew up in the church, or your parents are Christians, or you go to a Christian school. Those are all things that give you knowledge, but they don't provide understanding. She even goes as far as to say that the Bible itself cannot provide understanding in and of itself if it's read the wrong way, because it can be misunderstood. One can read it and not retain it and not be transformed by it, and therefore even the Bible cannot provide truth in and of itself. So what does provide truth? Well, one has to die to themselves in order to truly understand what truth is. She talks about being on the wrong side of the grave. In the novel, there's the low levels and the high places, and they're separated by this grave. And in order to get to the high places, you have to bury yourself in the grave. One must sacrifice their will and lay down their whole self in order to move on to the high places and follow the shepherd. This is how one begins to understand truth. Because as you put your flesh to death and you stop sowing to the flesh, you begin to sow to the Spirit. And as you sow to the Spirit becomes alive in you. And it's the Spirit that activates the understanding of truth. So that knowledge that you retain from books and school and church and the Bible is now awakened and brought to understanding through the Spirit alive in you, because you've put yourself to death. And so one must die in order to move from a level of knowledge to understanding when it comes to truth. And this is played out in a sanctified life. This is the process of sanctification. Dying to oneself is what enables the process of sanctification. And sanctification is what enables one to move to understanding truth. This is a daily process, not a one-time thing. It's partnering with the Savior. It's personal growth. That's why she talks about personal growth and development and understanding. This is where the sanctified life comes into play. That personally you're every day striving for holiness, and you're striving to die to yourself and sow to the Spirit. And as you do this, you become better and better acquainted with truth, and you begin to understand it instead of just knowing it. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes ingrained into who you are. And it's not just something you know, it's something you believe at the core of your being, something you live out, you act out. It's something that controls who you are and what you do, how you think, not just something you know. This is essential to us as Christians. In a world that's straying from the truth every day, further and further, we as Christians need to know the truth, but more than that, we need to understand the truth. The truth needs to be in us and alive in us, and we need to be controlled by it, not just know it. And so we need to understand that knowledge is not enough. That knowledge, yes, is good, but it's not sufficient in and of itself. That we have to die to ourselves, put to death the flesh so that we can move to the high places. And we have to live a sanctified life every day in order to understand truth, so that we can live and walk in boldness to those around us.